The Honorable Professor Vlad Nistor, thank you for the honor of joining us at the Institute for
The
Cultural
pleasure is mine.
Diplomacy. Thank you, here in Berlin, and for your keynote speech. We would like to ask you 5 questions in order to hear your thoughts and opinions on some salient issues. So the first one would be, as an experienced academic, please tell us what your opinion is regarding the challenges the education system has faced since the economic crisis.
Oh, there were a lot. Speaking from a global perspective, the system of education in the whole world, not only in Europe, of course in Europe, but not only, is in a very tough moment, in a very difficult one. That starts not only from the economic difficulties, from the budgetary problems of public or private institutions, higher education institutions, but also for the not very clear perspectives for the young generation involved in the education system, in the beneficiaries of what we are every day doing in our universities. And that creates a sort of never-ending problem with dangers, higher and higher dangers. The only possibility is to try to avoid them by professionalizing our actions. And when I'm telling you these, I'm referring in the same time to the teaching staff and to the students. Only a good report, a good atmosphere, and a useful, constructive attitude in very difficult financial moments can save the reality.
Okay, the second question. Young people in Europe are struggling today with a very high unemployment rate. And what would be your advice for recent graduates who are struggling to find their first full-time job?
It depends, from country to country. The reality is not the same everywhere. There are strange, more developed countries where the problem is more important than in less developed European countries where realities are better. Comparing for example, 2 cases I have now in my mind. First, on an extreme, Spain, and on the other extreme, the newcomers in European Union, like my country, like Romania. The realities are very different because, in Romania, for example, or in other countries like Romania, in Hungary, in Bulgaria, in Czech Republic, why not, or in Slovakia, there are new challenges from the economic perspective, and these new challenges sometimes need new attitudes, new professional behaviors, new style of working and of creating, and that's for the young generation is. But in other countries, the difficulties are much more important. And the example I gave you, it's perhaps the dangerous one. I think that, again, the only possibility is, because it's very difficult to say how to do it from the global perspective, but from the individual perspective, the only solution is the high quality of your professional activities, the higher standards in your educational system, and as a result, your position as a professionist, a more consolidated position as a professionist.
Thank you. From the point of view of an historian, how do you perceive the relationship between cultural diplomacy and the attitude of post-Soviet countries towards the EU accession? So, do you see any cultural trends that may point towards the future developments?
The reality is again very different from one country to another. We are looking today in Ukraine, for example, and we can see there an entirely divided country. A country where a part of the population is obvious against, and the other part of the population is angry in favor of EU accession, of more than EU is the idea of going closer to Europe, closer to what a lot of generations in that part of the world considered to be a target. The idea of liberty, of civilized country, and why not, most of all, of a democratic political system. And EU now, in the general attitude of these post-Soviet, as you called it, countries, is referring to these. Europe means democracy, Europe means other standards, and why not sometimes Europe can mean prosperity. And that makes all these population, sometimes huge population, to be so involved in the debate, even to the point to transform it in a political struggle, as it's happening in Ukraine today.
It's often been said that the Cold War was the pinnacle of cultural diplomacy, when the superpowers fought a battle to win over supporters for their competing ideologies. Politically speaking, what changes have you witnessed in the role of culture as a form of politics and diplomacy between countries?
The Cold War was much more than these. The Cold War was a struggle for power, was a struggle for supremacy, and ideology and propaganda were used as auxiliary techniques in a fight. Sometimes instead of, let's say, rockets, the missiles in a correct form. Sometimes instead of missiles, some political regimes during that period, Cold War period, used words. And the debate and the struggle and the conflict translated from these political and military tension to the level of discourses. It was never really a competition for bringing more and more members to your ideological family. The ideological family, and generally speaking, the ideology was only a pretext, was only the dressing of a harder and horrible reality.
Thank you. What are your views so far about the ICD conference and the opportunity to meet and debate for people representing different professional fields from politics, education, and media?
You know, I'm for the second time here, and as always, I am really impressed. And first of all, mainly, I am impressed by the capacity of saying so many different interesting things, starting from so many different perspectives and involving so different personalities coming from different areas, cultural areas, with different professional backgrounds, trying to identify together common subjects and trying to make things from the intellectual point of view better.
Well, thank you for your time. It was an honor and a privilege to have you here with us today.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure was mine.